There's been some new stuff happening with Honda and Aston Martin's race car drivers, even though we thought Honda would just stay in the background. It looks like the Japanese car company wants to have more say in things. With Honda and Red Bull doing really well together recently, and some new comments from Adrian Newey about Lance Stroll, could we maybe see a dream team of Alonso and Verstappen starting in 2026? And if that happens, what would Lawrence have to do to make it work? There's no doubt that Honda is one of the most unpredictable teams on the racetrack for lots of reasons, mainly because they're the ones who will decide if Aston Martin has a really good season when the new rules start. But now there's an even bigger question, and that's about which drivers will be on the team. Even though many people thought that Alonso would stop racing after 2026, which could still happen, Honda and Adrian Newey are going to try to make a big move where we might see Verstappen and Alonso racing together on the same team. Aston Martin has already said out loud that they want to sign Verstappen in the past few months. And what the team is doing shows us that they're changing things from the inside, which should be enough to get Verstappen interested. Even Helmut Marko has said that the team based in Silverstone is getting good enough to make Max want to join them. The question is whether the four-time world champion would want to take on that challenge. But like I said earlier, Honda isn't going to give up because they already said they would do anything they can to work with Max again. Obviously, they signed a contract for a long time with Aston Martin, and this is the only place where they could work together with him. The president of Honda, Koji Watanabe, has talked about how much say his company will have in choosing drivers for Aston Martin. He said it's really cool to work together with Newey at Aston Martin. We will work together to make a really good F1 car. Honda will give engines to fewer teams now, but we will keep giving our opinions as Honda when deciding which drivers to pick for 2026 and after. Obviously, the team gets to make the final choice about which drivers join, but it will be the same as it was at Red Bull, where we get to share what we think. Obviously, at Red Bull, we know that if Honda hadn't had influence, we would have seen Yuki kicked out of the sport a long time ago. But even when Honda stopped working with Red Bull, people say they helped a lot in getting the Japanese driver moved up to the Austrian team. All of this shows that once they start working with Aston Martin, they're not going to be happy with anything less than Verstappen. They have really strong support from Adrian Newey, who said he wasn't happy with Lance Stroll earlier this year. There was a report from people inside Aston Martin that there was a secret meeting between the technical partner Newey and Lawrence Stroll, the owner of the team, where Adrian said that he doesn't think Lance can get the most out of the car they're about to build. Of course, 2025 has been a really interesting season for how many points the team has gotten, because right now, Lance has gotten 100% of the team's points, which is 10 points in the 3 races we've been to. But that doesn't change the fact that he's driven really badly in the past couple of years, which is why the only way for Aston Martin to be successful might be to make this big move and keep Alonso while also signing Verstappen. I know what you're all thinking. Alonso said that he will stop racing at the end of this season, unless Aston Martin gives him something better. But on the other hand, we have to be realistic and say that if we don't have his advice, I don't think the team will go in the right direction. This is where Honda and Verstappen become important, and when talking about these two sides possibly working together in the future. Watanabe has said, "Honestly, I hope there'll be another chance for Honda to work with Max Verstappen. I really hope so. I've talked to him many times and he's always been positive about how we think and work. Max is also really good at talking with the Honda engineers. He speaks clearly with them, and that makes sure the engineers have become fans of his, which is why they work so hard for him. People often see the athlete, but I also really respect Max as a person. It's one thing for Honda to say they have feelings about working with Max, but when you have a 4-time world champion who agrees with the Japanese company, that tells you a lot more about this possible team-up. When talking about his life after Honda and starting a new journey from 2026 on, Verstappen has said, "Of course, before we started working with Honda, we had our wins. But I could never have imagined how high we got, winning 4 championships together. It's more about remembering what we did together in the sport, and who knows, of course, in the future too, you know what can happen. So it's goodbye for now, but that's it. I'm still pretty young and you never know what happens later." Right now, Red Bull has a really hard job ahead of them to build a good car and keep Verstappen on their team. Even with the 3rd or sometimes 4th fastest car on the track, he's still 2nd in the Drivers' Championship, just 1 point behind Norris after the first 3 races of the season. But on the other hand, we have to look at a really important thing here. Is Red Bull going in the right direction? And more importantly, is Aston Martin ready for changes? There's definitely a lot of work to do when it comes to the 2nd driver spot with Stroll, who again, even though he's had a good start to the 2025 season, doesn't automatically mean that he's the team leader all of a sudden. But now, the question that bothers us is whether or not Lawrence is going to be ready for this move that means his son gets kicked off the team and replaced with a 4-time world champion. He will have the special chance of having 2 multiple-time world champions driving on the same team. And the only reason he might not want this to happen is because of the love he has for Lance. If it wasn't for the young Canadian driver, he wouldn't have gotten into the sport in the first place. But if you ask Juan Pablo Montoya, he thinks that while Verstappen signing with Aston Martin is just a matter of time, it's not going to happen as a replacement for Stroll, but for the two-time world champion. Talking more about how he feels about this whole situation, Montoya has said, "I think Max will get an offer he can't say no to from Aston Martin. He might give Red Bull a chance for a year and a chance for Adrian to start figuring it out. Adrian can't do that right away. It's a whole new group and everyone needs to start working together. Are they going to be better than where they are next year? For sure. But I don't think they're going to start winning a bunch of races. But if Red Bull struggles in year 1, then it wouldn't surprise me if by race 3, Max has already signed with somebody else. If I were Max, I would go to Aston. Mercedes would be cool too, but Aston would make the most sense. Having Adrian and Honda, everything he has won with is there. Of course, if things with Verstappen and Red Bull stay the same and the 4-time world champion keeps his promise and finishes his contract in 2028, then Honda will probably switch to their next choice, Yuki Tsunoda. But the Japanese company has been very clear that they're not the guaranteed ticket for their young driver to stay in the sport for as long as they are around. If they have a chance to sign Verstappen or Tsunoda, I think you all know who they're going to focus on. But will Lawrence be ready to kick his own son off the team just for this to happen? The latest business deals from the Canadian billionaire show that he's planning to stay for a long time. And what that means is that he won't build a team for a championship that will be won by another driver. It's hard for Lawrence to accept the tough truth that his son might not have what it takes to be a world champion. And if he does, it would have to be in a really good car with a really bad teammate. Kind of like a fixed game. With all of this in mind, where do you think Aston Martin sees themselves when it comes to their driver lineup? And more importantly, how much influence do you think Honda has in this situation? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video that appears on your screen right now.